Welcome, dear listener. Step into the frosted fox with me, where Dartmoor's blizzard traps secrets tighter than any lock. I'm your guide through the footprints, the hemlock, and the hidden wills. Every clue crisp as new snow, every revelation sharp as ice. If you've ever suspected love can kill as surely as a blade, this is your tale. Subscribe now and never miss a creak of the dumbwaiter. New chapters arrive weekly, wrapped in mystery. Yours in suspense, the weaver of moorland secrets. Snow seals the inn. A bride's uncle bleeds out in a locked library, and a poisoned toast waits at the altar. Miss Marple spots a single melting snowflake on the carpet and knows betrayal runs deeper than blood. Welcome to Miss Marple and the Snowstorm, Death Betrayal. 5 chapters of frost, forgery, and fatal vows. Hit play. The thaw is coming. Chapter 1. The blizzard's first whisper. The snow began as a gentle tease, flakes drifting like wayward confetti across the desolate sweep of Dartmoor. By the time the pony trap crested the final ridge, it had thickened into a relentless white veil, erasing the horizon and swallowing the moorland track. Miss Jane Marple clutched her muff tighter, her sensible boots braced against the swaying floorboards. The frosted Fox Inn emerged from the storm like a ship from fog, timber-framed, low-roofed, its sign creaking in the gale, the painted fox's eyes glowing red from the lantern above the door. Inside, the inn was a bastion of warmth and wedding fever. The great hall buzzed with the nuptials of Miss Lydia Carver to Mr. Geoffrey Blaine, a union of old moorland money and new ambition. Garlands of ivy and white roses draped the beams. A string quartet soared through green sleeves with valiant cheer. Champagne fizzed in crystal flutes. Miss Marple, invited as a courtesy to Lydia's late mother's friend, accepted a glass and observed from a settle by the inglenook. The bride, Lydia, 25, glided in ivory silk, her auburn curls pinned with pearls, her smile brittle as thin ice. The groom, Geoffrey, 30, stood tall and golden, his tailor's cut unable to hide the restless energy in his banker's hands. The wedding party was a tapestry of tensions. Mrs. Eleanor Carver, Lydia's mother, 48, statuesque in sapphire velvet, her eyes sharp as winter stars. Captain Hugo Blaine, Geoffrey's best man, 32, scarred from the Somme, his laugh too loud. Miss Vivian Hart, 27, Lydia's ex-school friend, jilted by Geoffrey, her emerald gown a deliberate thorn. Mr. Rupert Carver, 22, Lydia's cousin, heir presumptive, drowning in gambling debts. Elsie, the maid, 19, darting with trays, her apron stained with what might be wine or blood. At 8 o'clock, the quartet paused. Sir Edmund Carver, Lydia's estranged uncle, 60, reclusive millionaire, entered the hall. Gaunt, hawk-faced, his black cape swirling, he raised a glass. To family, he toasted, voice gravel over glass, and to betrayals that outlive us. Lydia's smile faltered. Geoffrey's hand tightened on her waist. Miss Marple noted the tremor in Sir Edmund's glass, fear or fury. At 8:17, Sir Edmund excused himself to the library. Correspondence, he muttered. The door closed with a click. The key turned from within. The storm redoubled, wind howling like a banshee. At 8:45, Mrs. Carver knocked on the library door. No answer. Captain Blaine rattled the handle. Locked. Rupert fetched the innkeeper's spare key. It turned, but the door resisted. A shoulder charge splintered the jamb. Sir Edmund lay sprawled across the desk, a letter opener buried in his heart, blood pooling like spilled claret on the blotter. The room was locked, the single window latched, frost undisturbed on the panes. The only key lay on the carpet, inches from his outstretched hand. In the grate, a telegram burned, its corner legible. Betrayal runs deeper than blood. Mrs. Carver screamed, a sound torn from the marrow. Lydia fainted into Geoffrey's arms. Vivian's champagne glass shattered on the floor. Elsie dropped her tray, oysters sliding like pale eyes. Rupert retched. Miss Marple moved with quiet purpose. She knelt by the body, gloved fingers avoiding the blood. The wound was precise between the third and fourth ribs, angled upward, a lover's knowledge or a soldier's. The letter opener was silver, engraved EC 92, Sir Edmund's own. She examined the window. The latch was secure, but a single snowflake melted on the carpet beneath, its trail a faint damp line from the sill. The frost outside was unbroken, yet the flake was fresh. The telegram's remnants revealed more. Will exposed at midnight. The paper was heavy, official, post office issue. Miss Marple sniffed the air. Bitter almonds beneath the smoke. Cyanide, perhaps, on the blade. The innkeeper, Mr. Trelawney, burst in, face blanched. Phone lines are down. The storm's cut the road. We're trapped till morning. Captain Blaine checked the window. No footprints. Impossible. Miss Marple lifted the key with a handkerchief. Its bow was warm, recently handled. She turned to the desk, a will, half-drafted, disinheriting Rupert in favor of... The ink was fresh, the name Lydia crossed out, replaced with Charity. Mrs. Carver's voice trembled. He was rewriting it tonight. Said family had betrayed him. Geoffrey's hand slipped from Lydia's waist. Vivian's eyes glittered with unshed tears, or triumph. Elsie hovered, apron now definitely blood-stained. Miss Marple stood by the hearth, the fire's glow painting her face in gentle planes. A locked room, she murmured, yet the snowflake speaks. Someone entered and left without disturbing the frost. Outside, the blizzard screamed, sealing the frosted fox in a white tomb. The quartet struck up again, faltering through, God rest ye merry gentlemen. Miss Marple sipped her champagne, untouched. The first whisper of betrayal had been heard, and the storm was only beginning. Chapter 2. Footprints that vanish into white morning clawed its way through the blizzard's remnants, a pale, reluctant light filtering over the Dartmoor wastes. The frosted Fox Inn stood besieged by snowdrifts that sculpted the moor into undulating waves of white, the wind now a low moan rather than a shriek. Miss Jane Marple rose at dawn. Her room's casement window rhymed with frost flowers that distorted the view like a flawed lens. She dressed swiftly, pinning her brooch with steady hands, and descended to the great hall where the wedding party's gaiety had curdled into dread. The taproom was a haven of peat smoke and polished oak, the fire crackling with forced vigor. Breakfast lay untouched, kedgeree congealing, toast soldiers standing sentry in racks. The suspects huddled around a long trestle table, faces etched by sleepless shadows. Lydia Carver sipped tea with mechanical grace, her ivory dressing gown a ghost of yesterday's bridal glow. Geoffrey Blaine paced, his golden curls dishevelled, fists clenching at phantom foes. Mrs. Eleanor Carver stared into her cup as if divining the future in the leaves. Captain Hugo Blaine nursed a brandy, his scar livid in the firelight. Miss Vivian Hart toyed with a cigarette, unlit, her emerald wrap slipping from one shoulder. Mr. Rupert Carver slouched, eyes red-rimmed from more than grief. Elsie, the maid, cleared plates with clattering nerves, her apron now spotless. Miss Marple took a seat at the table's head, accepting porridge from Elsie. "A locked room," she began, spoon stirring slowly, "is merely a puzzle with a hidden piece. Let us find it." She turned to the window first. Outside, The snow lay pristine except for a chaos of footprints circling the library, overlapping loops deep and frantic, then abruptly halting at a low stone wall that bounded the inn's herb garden. The wall was capped with unbroken snow, no sign of vaulting. "Impossible," Geoffrey muttered, joining her at the pane. They circle like a mad dance, then vanish. Miss Marple's gaze traced the prints. Narrow boots, heeled, perhaps a woman's. One set shallower, as if the walker carried weight on the return. Back at the table, she addressed Mrs. Carver. "Sir Edmund mentioned betrayals. What family shadows linger?" Mrs. Carver's sapphire rings flashed. "Edmund was reclusive, cut ties after father's death, said we'd betrayed his trust." Captain Hugo snorted. He hoarded the estate like a miser. Geoffrey here was to inherit until the new will. Geoffrey's face tightened. "I knew nothing of a change." Miss Marple produced the half-drafted will from her reticule. Lydia's name crossed out, charity in its place, motive for interruption. Vivian's cigarette snapped. "He deserved it. Left me at the altar for Lydia's fortune." Her voice was venom wrapped in silk. Rupert laughed, bitterly. "Fortune? I'm his heir presumptive. Debts up to my ears. If he disinherited me." Elsie dropped a saucer. It shattered like gunfire. "Sorry, miss. I heard him arguing last night, through the door." "With whom?" Miss Marple pressed. "A woman," whispered. "Something about the compact." Miss Marple's eyes gleamed. She led them to the library, now sealed with twine. Inside, the blood had dried to rust on the blotter. She examined the desk anew. A torn wedding invitation, its corner ripped, revealing a coded scrawl in pencil. WILLFORGED, 1990. "The year of Sir Edmund's father's death," she murmured. Captain Hugo paled. "Old Carver's will left everything to Edmund. We contested, lost." A glint caught her eye. A compact silver lipstick smeared, half buried under the rug. She lifted it. The mirror inside was cracked, reflecting fractured faces. The lipstick was crimson, the shade Vivian wore. Vivian recoiled. "Mine. I lost it yesterday." "In a locked room," Miss Marple echoed. The maid, Elsie, hovered at the door. I polished the compact, gave it back to Miss Hart at tea. Miss Marple traced the rug's edge. It concealed a faint seam in the floorboards. She pried with her umbrella tip. A panel lifted, revealing a dumbwaiter shaft, narrow, dusty, descending to the cellar. Fresh blood smeared the ropes, still tacky. "The hidden entrance," she said. The snowflake fell from boots climbing up. Rupert knelt. "Blood. Whose?" Captain Hugo's scar twitched. I heard whispers at midnight. Eavesdropped outside the door. A scuffle, then silence. "And you said nothing," Geoffrey accused. "Thought it was lovers," Hugo muttered. Miss Marple lowered a lantern into the shaft. At the bottom, a cellar storeroom. Barrels, cobwebs, a bloodied glove. Left-handed, monogrammed EC. Edmund Carver. "Planted," she said. "The killer wore it to grip the opener." The group descended the inn's main stair to the cellar. The dumbwaiter door was ajar, footprints in the dust leading to a coal chute, sealed by snow outside. Miss Marple's voice cut the gloom. The footprints circle to confuse. The real path is within. Elsie confessed then, voice quavering. "I eavesdropped too from the pantry. Heard Sir Edmund say the will is forged." Then a gasp. "And the voice," Miss Marple prompted. "A woman's, familiar." The lantern flickered. Shadows danced like conspirators. Miss Marple extinguished it, plunging the cellar into dark. A rustle. Someone moved. She relit it swiftly. Vivian stood by the chute, glove in hand. "Trying to hide it?" Miss Marple asked gently. "I found it here, I swear." The chapter closed with the group ascending, the storm's whisper now a sigh. Miss Marple pocketed the compact. The footprints had vanished into white, but the betrayal was taking shape, one shadow at a time. Chapter 3. The poisoned toast to forever. The snowstorm, having spent its fury, now settled into a brooding hush over the frosted fox, the moor a vast undulating shroud under a pewter sky. By noon, the inn's chapel, a squat stone appendage with lancet windows and a bell tower half buried in drifts, became the stage for a wedding rehearsal that no one believed would proceed. Miss Jane Marple arrived early, her galoshes leaving precise prints in the fresh powder, her muff concealing the bloodied glove and cracked compact. The chapel's interior smelled of damp stone and candle smoke. Holly boughs adorned the altar, their berries bright as fresh wounds. The wedding party assembled in strained tableau, Lydia Carver in a simple wool dress, her veil replaced by a nervous smile. Geoffrey Blaine, stiff in morning coat, his banker's poise cracking. Mrs. Eleanor Carver, sapphire cloak clasped tight, her gaze darting like a trapped bird's. Captain Hugo Blaine, leaning on a pew, brandy flask glinting. Vivian Hart, emerald scarf, knotted defiantly. Rupert Carver, fidgeting with a cigarette. Elsie, clutching a bouquet of forced narcissi, petals trembling. The vicar, Mr. Penrose, a reed-thin man with a voice like parchment, began the vows. Dearly beloved. Miss Marple sat in the back pew, knitting needles clicking softly. She noted the groom's flask, silver, engraved GB, passed to Captain Hugo during the ring exchange. Hugo took a swig, then offered it to Geoffrey. Miss Marple's needles stilled. Stop, she called, rising. The brandy, smell it. Geoffrey sniffed, face paling. Almonds, bitter. Dr. Haydock summoned from the inn, confirmed with a test strip. Hemlock, enough to kill in minutes. Chaos erupted. Lydia fainted against the altar rail. Vivian's scarf slipped, revealing a bruise on her collarbone. Mrs. Carver's rings clinked as she clutched the pew. Miss Marple lifted the flask. Meant for the toast. Who filled it? Elsie stammered. I saw Mrs. Carver in the pantry at dawn, with a small bottle. Mrs. Carver's voice was ice. Laudanum, for my nerves. Miss Marple produced a second bottle from her muff. Hemlock, label peeled, found in the dumbwaiter shaft. This matches the residue. Geoffrey rounded on his best man. You passed it to me. Hugo's scar flared. I drank first. Would I poison myself? Rupert laughed, manic. Edmund's will, disinheriting me. Geoffrey gets it all, motive enough. Miss Marple moved to the altar. Beneath the cloth, a blackmail note. Pay $5,000 or the forgery is exposed. The handwriting matched the coded invitation. 1919, she said. Sir Edmund's father's will. Forged to favor him over his siblings. Mrs. Carver, your husband's sister, knew. Mrs. Carver's composure shattered. I found love letters. Edmund and my sister-in-law. He paid to silence her. I forged them to protect Lydia. The chandelier above the nave swayed, chains creaking. A link snapped. The fixture plunged. Elsie screamed, diving aside. Crystals exploded across the flagstones like deadly hail. Miss Marple knelt, examining the chain, sawn with a jeweler's file, the cut, fresh. A warning, she said. The maid knows too much. Elsie sobbed. I saw a shadow in the crypt last night, through the grating. Miss Marple led them to the crypt stairs, hidden behind the organ. The iron gate was ajar, frost on the steps melted by recent passage. Below, the crypt was a vault of shadows, stone sarcophagi, cobwebs, a faint scent of brandy. A secret passage yawned behind a Carver tomb, brick, narrow, leading upward. She traced it with her lantern. The passage climbed to the inn's cellar, emerging beside the dumbwaiter. A second glove, right-handed, bloodied, lay discarded. The killer used both exits. The footprints were a diversion. Vivian's voice echoed. I followed Geoffrey last night, heard him argue with Edmund about money. Geoffrey's face twisted. He threatened to expose my debts. I left. Miss Marple lifted the bouquet Elsie dropped. Beneath the narcissi, a wedding ring, not Lydia's, engraved EH to GB 1925, Vivian's ring from her broken engagement. Planted, Vivian whispered, to frame me. The chapel bell tolled one, muffled by snow. Miss Marple stood at the altar, the poisoned flask in hand. The toast was to silence the groom, the chandelier to silence the maid. The passage connects all. She turned to the group. Tonight, a séance in the ballroom. The mirrors will reflect the truth. As they filed out, snow began again, soft as a lie. Miss Marple pocketed the ring. The poisoned toast had been raised, but the betrayal was far from swallowed. The storm's heart still beat, and the next lie waited in the glass. Chapter 4. The Ghost in the Mirror. Night draped the frosted fox in velvet darkness, the storm reborn as a relentless howl that rattled the inn's timbers and hurled snow against the panes like fistfuls of gravel. The ballroom, a relic of Victorian grandeur, gleamed under a single chandelier, its twin still in ruins from the chapel. Mirrors lining the walls in gilded frames, reflecting infinity. Miss Jane Marple had transformed the space into a séance theatre. A round table draped in black velvet, candles flickering in silver candelabra, a crystal ball clouded with breath. The wedding party sat in a tense circle, hands linked as if in prayer, or restraint. Miss Marple presided at the table's head, her lavender shawl a soft contrast to the room's severity. Sir Edmund's spirit lingers, she intoned, voice low as a crypt's echo. The mirrors will show what the snow conceals. Lydia Carver's hands trembled in Geoffrey's. Her wool dress seemed to swallow her. Mrs. Eleanor Carver's sapphire cloak was replaced by a mourning black, her eyes hollow. Captain Hugo Blaine's brandy flask was confiscated, his scar twitching in the candlelight. Vivian Hart's emerald scarf was gone, her fingers bare of rings. Rupert Carver chain-smoked, ash dusting his waistcoat. Elsie clutched a rosary, her apron now crisp. Close your eyes, Miss Marple instructed. Speak what you saw. The candles guttered. Shadows danced in the mirrors, distorting faces into grotesque masks. Mrs. Carver spoke first, voice brittle. I saw Edmund in the library at 7. He showed me the new will, Charity, not Lydia. He laughed. Geoffrey's grip tightened. He threatened my debts. I left at 8. Vivian's laugh was sharp. I heard him on the telephone, arguing about a duplicate key. A mirror reflected a flicker, a silhouette slipping behind the tapestry that concealed the passage to the crypt. Miss Marple's eyes snapped open. She rose, umbrella in hand, and crossed the room. The tapestry lifted, a draught carried the scent of damp stone. Footsteps echoed, rapid, retreating. After them, she called. The chase was a whirlwind through the inn's hidden veins. The passage twisted behind walls, descending to the crypt, then ascending to the attic. Snow sifted through a cracked skylight, dusting the floor. A suitcase lay open, Sir Edmund's monogrammed. Inside, the true will, sealed in 1919, bequeathing the estate to a children's hospital, not Edmund. A forged duplicate lay beside it, Edmund's signature a clumsy mimicry. Rupert knelt, face ashen. He found it yesterday, threatened to burn the fake. The attic door slammed. Vivian stood there, a derringer glinting in her hand. He ruined me. Geoffrey left me for Lydia's money. Miss Marple stepped forward. Umbrella raised. You planted the ring in the bouquet, paid Elsie to eavesdrop. Elsie sobbed from the stairs. She gave me £5, said it was a game. Vivian fired. The bullet shattered a mirror, shards raining like ice. Miss Marple tripped a hidden wire, tied earlier to a beam. A net of fishing line ensnared Vivian's wrist. The gun clattered. Captain Hugo tackled her, pinning her arms. The key, Miss Marple said, producing a wax impression from the suitcase, taken from the library key at tea, duplicated in the cellar forge. Geoffrey's voice broke. You killed him for me, Vivian spat. For us, the will was fake. Lydia gets nothing. Miss Marple lifted the true will. Edmund discovered the forgery last week, planned to expose it at the wedding. The candles in the ballroom below flared as if in agreement. Mrs. Carver entered the attic, face streaked with tears. My sister-in-law forged it in 1919. Edmund blackmailed her for years. The storm's howl softened to a sigh. Miss Marple bound Vivian's hands with her shawl. The ghost in the mirror was no spirit. The seance drew you out. Back in the ballroom, the mirrors reflected the truth. Vivian's defiance crumbling, Elsie's guilt, the other's shock. Miss Marple placed the wax key on the table. Tomorrow at dawn, the thaw reveals all. The chandelier swayed gently, crystals chiming like a funeral bell. Miss Marple extinguished a candle, its smoke curling like a departing soul. The ghost had been unmasked, but the final betrayal waited in the snow's melting heart. Chapter 5. The Thaw of Truth. Dawn broke over Dartmoor with a tenderness that belied the storm's savagery, sunlight spilling like molten gold across the thawing snow. The frosted fox inn emerged from its white cocoon, icicles weeping from the eaves, the moor steaming under the first clear sky in days. Miss Jane Marple stood in the library, the scene of Sir Edmund's death now bathed in soft light. The blood stain on the blotter faded to a rust-colored ghost. The wedding party assembled one final time, their faces a gallery of exhaustion and dread, the air thick with the scent of pine and unspoken confessions. Miss Marple held the true will aloft, its seal unbroken. The thaw reveals what the snow concealed, she began, voice steady as the chapel bell now tolling outside. Sir Edmund was not the victim of greed alone, but of a betrayal rooted in love and lies. She laid the evidence on the desk. The wax key impression, the bloodied gloves, the forged will, the hemlock flask, the derringer, the suitcase from the attic. Lydia Carver, veil discarded, clutched Geoffrey's hand, her wool dress replaced by simple grey. Mrs. Eleanor Carver stood apart, black gown stark, her sapphire rings gone. Captain Hugo Blaine leaned against the window, scar softened in the light. Vivian Hart sat cuffed, emerald scarf confiscated, her defiance melted. Rupert Carver chain-smoked, ash trembling. Elsie wrung her apron, rosary beads clicking. The locked room was a stage, Miss Marple said. Mrs. Carver, you entered at 8:15, using the dumbwaiter shaft. The snowflake fell from your boots as you climbed. You argued with Edmund. He showed you the true will, exposing your sister-in-law's 1919 forgery. Mrs. Carver's voice was a whisper. He loved her, paid to silence the scandal. I protected Lydia's future. Miss Marple produced the love letters from her reticule, found in the crypt passage. You forged these to blackmail Edmund. When he planned to expose the will at the wedding, you acted. She turned to the footprints. You circled outside to confuse, wearing Elsie's boots stolen from the scullery. The stone wall was a blind. You re-entered via the coal chute. Elsie sobbed. She paid me to clean the boots, said it was mud. Miss Marple lifted the hemlock flask. You laced the brandy for Geoffrey to silence him before he learned the estate was lost to charity. The chandelier in the chapel, sawn by you, Mrs. Carver, to warn Elsie. Captain Hugo spoke, voice rough. I saw her in the cellar at dawn, thought she was fetching wine. Miss Marple nodded. The gloves, Edmund's, stolen from his room. You wore them to grip the letter opener, then planted one in the dumbwaiter, one in the crypt. Vivian's laugh was hollow. I shot the mirror to stop her. She promised me Geoffrey's love if I helped. Rupert dropped his cigarette. She offered me $5,000 to keep quiet about the debts. Miss Marple opened the true will. Edmund discovered the forgery last week. He rewrote his own to honor his father's intent, charity, not family. You, Mrs. Carver, stabbed him at 8:17, locked the door, and exited via the dumbwaiter. The key was duplicated in wax, returned to the carpet. Mrs. Carver sank to a chair, face crumpling. Lydia's future ruined. He laughed at me. Lydia stepped forward, releasing Geoffrey's hand. Mother, you killed for nothing. I loved him, not the money. She turned to Geoffrey. The wedding is off. Geoffrey bowed his head, golden curls dull. I knew the debts were fatal. I should have told her. Miss Marple placed the compact on the desk, its cracked mirror reflecting the room. Vivian's compact, planted to frame her. The ring in the bouquet. Hers, stolen to cast blame. The seance drew you out, Mrs. Carver, when you moved behind the tapestry. The innkeeper, Mr. Trelawney, entered with constables, their boots leaving muddy prints. Mrs. Carver was cuffed, her black gown trailing like a funeral pall. Vivian, Elsie, and Rupert were led away for complicity. The library window gleamed, frost fully melted, revealing the moor's vast freedom. Miss Marple lifted the telegram's remnants. Betrayal runs deeper than blood. Edmund wrote it to himself, a warning. You silenced him, but the truth thaws. Outside, a sleigh waited, bells jingling. Lydia embraced Miss Marple. The hospital will honor his name. Miss Marple boarded, muff warm in her lap. The frosted fox receded, its windows now clear. The storm's betrayal melted with the snow. The moor stretched wide, the inn restored to peace, the deadly plot buried in the thaw's quiet embrace.